A Gentle History of Spoons. Introduction, a soft start with spoons. In the quiet hush of a late evening, let us drift gently into the ordinary. Into something small, familiar, and comforting. Tonight, we begin with the humble spoon. It rests silently beside your teacup or bowl. Its shape is soft, its purpose simple. And yet, the spoon has journeyed across millennia, passing through ancient temples, candlelit feasting halls, quiet peasant kitchens, and polished silver drawers in elegant homes. It has been carved from bone, molded from bronze, etched in gold, and pressed from plastic. The story of the spoon, dear listener, is the story of humanity, told slowly, one scoop at a time. As we begin, breathe gently. Let your shoulders loosen. The tale ahead will carry no urgency. Only stillness. Picture the first spoon, shaped not by machine or tool, but by nature. A curved shell, perhaps. Or a hollowed piece of wood. Something simple. Something just right for lifting a bit of warm broth or sweet honey to one's lips. In ancient times, people needed ways to eat without burning fingers or losing precious drops. So they fashioned small tools, first crude, then clever, then beautiful. From riverbanks and hearthfires, to palaces and shrines, spoons became companions of daily life. But this is not a tale of invention alone. It is a quiet exploration of texture and time. Of how people across the world, in silence or celebration, have held a spoon in their hands, just like we still do. Spoons hold more than food. They hold memories. They stir old stories. They rest in drawers beside the forks and knives, yet remain somehow softer. More personal. So as you close your eyes or settle beneath your blanket, imagine a spoon not just as an object, but as a thread, linking past to present, hand to mouth, comfort to culture. Let us now journey, calmly, slowly, through the history of spoons. From the warm sands of ancient Egypt, to the gleaming steel of modern kitchens, the spoon awaits, ready to begin. Breathe in. And breathe out. We shall now travel to the ancient world. Ancient spoons, Egypt, Mesopotamia, and Rome. Let us drift back, thousands of years ago, to when the earliest civilizations pressed their footprints into warm, sunlit earth. Long before electricity, before books, before cities rose skyward, people still needed to eat. They still cradled something in their hands to help them sip, scoop, and stir. And so, the spoon was born. In ancient Egypt, around 1000 BCE, spoons were more than eating tools, they were sacred. Crafted with care, many were carved from ivory, bone, or wood, and some from bronze. They were not always simple. Some were shaped like lotus flowers, others like swimming ducks, or adorned with hieroglyphs that told stories of gods and offerings. These Egyptian spoons were often used in religious ceremonies, to scoop incense, oils, or salves, rather than food. They sat near altars or in tombs, waiting silently for the afterlife. Can you picture the slow, deliberate movements of a temple priest, carefully using a spoon to pour fragrant resin onto a burning fire? In the fertile lands of Mesopotamia, where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers kissed the soil, spoons were more functional. Archaeologists have found clay spoons in the ruins of Ur and Babylon, simple and curved, their edges smoothed by hands long vanished. These spoons were practical, used to stir grain porridge, scoop lentils, or feed the young and elderly. Their shapes speak not of grandeur, but of routine, of nourishment, of gentle care. And in ancient Rome, spoons became familiar at feasts and in kitchens. Known as cochlearium, Roman spoons were often made of bronze or silver, and many featured a long, slender handle with a small bowl at one end. Some even had pointed tips, perfect for digging snails from their shells. Imagine the soft clatter of spoons and bowls during a Roman dinner. Picture a Roman matron gently stirring a honeyed dish with a gleaming silver utensil, or a servant carefully feeding a child porridge with a tiny spoon. Spoons in Rome were so common, they were even mentioned in poetry and wills, passed down as heirlooms or buried with loved ones. These ancient spoons, though varied in shape and purpose, shared something timeless, a quiet presence in the rhythms of daily life. They were not tools of war or glory, but of gentleness, of care, of shared meals under flickering oil lamps. And as we leave this chapter, we carry with us an image, not of emperors or pyramids, but of a simple spoon resting on a stone table, beside a steaming bowl of humble stew. Spoons along the Silk Roads, China and Persia. Let your thoughts drift eastward now, toward ancient China and the vast empires of Persia, where silk and spices moved silently along dusty trade roads, and the clink of ceramic met the soft scrape of spoon against bowl. In the Han Dynasty of China, over 2,000 years ago, the spoon had already taken on forms both elegant and familiar. Crafted from bronze, jade, and later porcelain, Chinese spoons were often deep-bowled, with curved handles, perfect for sipping rich broths and herbal mixtures. Chinese cuisine has long been centered around soups and rice porridge, and the spoon became an essential companion. It was not merely a tool, but a part of the meal's harmony. One hand held chopsticks, and the other, a beautifully shaped spoon, balancing textures and flavors in gentle rhythm. Early Chinese spoons were sometimes engraved with characters, or shaped with symbolic curves. Some were used in medicine, to gently mix herbs or measure powders in a healer's workshop. Can you hear the soft sounds of a Chinese apothecary? Shelves lined with tiny drawers. The measured clink of ceramic as a spoon stirs warm liquid in a tea-colored bowl. A quiet pause. Then another scoop. Meanwhile, further west along the same winding trade routes, the empires of Persia, from the Achaemenids to the Sassanids, were also crafting spoons of remarkable form and purpose. Persian spoons were often made of brass, silver, or carved hardwood. They accompanied meals rich in stews, saffron rice, and thick yogurts. Persian dining, even in its ancient roots, was refined and ceremonial. Guests reclined on cushions while servants moved silently, bearing dishes and delicate spoons. In Persia, the spoon was not only an eating utensil but part of a poetic life, woven into literature and hospitality. Meals were shared. Spoons passed gently from hand to hand. The act of offering food with a spoon was seen as an extension of kindness. Both in China and Persia, the spoon carried not just food, but meaning, harmony, healing, generosity. These spoons journeyed across the Silk Road too. Traders wrapped them in cloth, packed them beside silks and spices, and exchanged them in distant markets. Slowly, their shapes and materials blended, spreading ideas across deserts and mountains. So tonight, we remember not grand armies or famous rulers, but the quiet legacy of the spoon, gliding through clear broths, mixing medicines, and resting in the palms of cooks and scholars alike. Softly, silently, a part of every gentle meal, spoons along the Silk Roads, China and Persia. Let us now drift eastward, carried gently along the winding routes of silk and song. The Silk Roads, ancient and dusty, stretched across mountains, deserts, and fields, and with every caravan that passed, not only goods traveled, but ideas, and quiet tools. Among them was the spoon. In the heart of ancient China, during the Han Dynasty, the spoon was already something essential, elegant, curved, and deeply familiar. Crafted with care from bronze, jade, and later porcelain, Chinese spoons were often designed with round bowls and slightly angled handles, ideal for lifting hot broths, herbal tonics, or smooth rice porridge. Meals in China were gentle rituals, guided by balance. A spoon in one hand, chopsticks in the other, this pairing spoke not of convenience, but of harmony. The spoon helped cradle food with calm precision, never hurried, never harsh. Even outside the kitchen, spoons played their part. In small, incense-scented apothecaries, they measured powders and stirred teas. In the quiet hours of morning, a grandmother might prepare a healing soup, her hands stirring in slow, practiced circles. There's a stillness to it, a deep peace in the clink of a porcelain spoon against a shallow bowl. It was, and remains, a sound tied to comfort. Now, let the breeze carry us westward, toward the Persian Empire, where ancient cities like Persepolis once stood tall under starlit skies. Here too, spoons graced the table. Made from brass, wood, or silver, Persian spoons were sometimes decorated with intricate designs, floral etchings, delicate scrollwork, or even inscribed blessings. Persian meals were rich in stews and soft dishes, warm eggplant, lentils, saffron-soaked rice, all best enjoyed slowly, with a spoon in hand. Hospitality in Persia was a revered tradition. Guests were honored. Food was art. And the spoon, passed gracefully, never tossed, became a symbol of courtesy and care. In poetry, too, the spoon found its place. Sometimes used as metaphor, sometimes as memory, as something gently stirring, not only soup, but the soul. As trade between East and West blossomed, Chinese and Persian spoons crossed borders. A spoon from Chang'an might find its way to a table in Samarkand. A brass Persian spoon might arrive in a Chinese port town, resting alongside silk and cinnamon. Through these quiet exchanges, shapes softened. Styles merged. And across two grand civilizations, the spoon remained, unchanged in essence, but always evolving in form. So as we rest here, in the hush of the ancient trade roads, think not of the horses or gold, but of a small, curved spoon resting atop a folded cloth. Waiting. Familiar. Steady. A friend to hands and hearts alike. Medieval spoons, feasts and faith. Now, let us gently cross the threshold into the Middle Ages, a time of stone castles, candlelight, and quiet monasteries. Though centuries removed from the ancient empires, the spoon remained, its form evolving, its place at the table ever more familiar. In medieval Europe, life was often simple, sometimes harsh. Yet even then, the spoon was a trusted companion, found in peasant cottages and noble halls alike. For the common folk, spoons were often made of wood. Birch, boxwood, or beech. Carved by hand. Soft to the touch. No two were exactly the same. These wooden spoons stirred pots over hearth fires, scooped barley porridge, or gently fed children by the glow of a tallow candle. Can you picture it? A quiet kitchen. Smoke curling from the ceiling beams. A mother lifting a spoonful of broth to her child's lips. Steam rising in the stillness. Among the nobility, spoons took on a new sheen. Crafted from bone, horn, pewter, or even silver, they became markers of status. A nobleman might carry his own spoon, tied to his belt or tucked into a pouch. Feasting halls rang not just with laughter, but with the soft chime of spoon against goblet. During lavish banquets, noble diners used their own spoons to enjoy thick soups, honeyed stews, and sweet custards. Often, a single spoon served through every course, washed between dishes with fragrant water in silver basins carried by quiet-footed servants. At monasteries, where silence and simplicity ruled, the spoon held a humble, sacred role. Monks dined in long stone halls, side by side, in near silence. Their spoons, plain, wooden, or tin, echoed faintly as they touched clay bowls filled with lentils or gruel. And in religious life beyond the monastery walls, spoons were sometimes part of holy rituals. In Eastern Orthodox traditions, special spoons were used to administer the Eucharist, not made for daily meals, but for sacred moments. Across medieval cultures, spoons also became cherished gifts. In parts of Wales, for example, intricately carved love spoons were offered by suitors to their beloved. Decorated with hearts, knots, or birds, each design held quiet meaning. A spoon, in this way, became not just practical, but deeply personal. As medieval Europe grew, so did the use of spoons. Though forks were still rare and knives common, the spoon held a steady place, soft in the hand, reliable in the bowl. It was the tool of the gentle meal, of the mother and the monk, of the feast and the fast. So tonight, as we rest in the flickering candlelight of long-ago halls, let us give a quiet nod to the medieval spoon. Still carved by hand. Still passed from one generation to the next. Still waiting, patiently, beside the bread and bowl. Spoons in the Islamic Golden Age in Africa. Let us drift now into another corner of the world, one where golden domes rose above ancient cities, and where art, science, and daily life flourished together like a slow-blooming flower. We begin in the luminous era of the Islamic Golden Age, a time spanning roughly from the 8th to the 14th century, when scholars gathered in quiet libraries, and inventors, poets, and physicians shaped a world of wonder and wisdom. In cities like Baghdad, Cordoba, and Cairo, daily life was filled with subtle rituals, soft conversations over cups of spiced tea, and meals savored in shaded courtyards. The spoon, though humble, was part of this refined rhythm. Crafted from copper, silver, or brass, many Islamic spoons of the time were not only practical but artistic. Their handles were often engraved with calligraphy, verses of poetry, blessings, or the names of their owners. Some spoons bore geometric patterns, others tiny floral scrolls, all etched with delicate care. In grand households and simple homes alike, spoons accompanied dishes full of flavor, rich lentil soups, stewed lamb, rice with dates and almonds. A spoon's curved bowl was perfect for lifting such fragrant mixtures, one quiet scoop at a time. In medicine, too, the spoon had a role. Physicians of the time, inspired by Greek texts and expanding on them, created spoon-shaped tools for mixing and measuring remedies. In hushed healing rooms, a spoon became an instrument of care and knowledge. Across the Red Sea and further south, in Africa, spoons took on many forms, shaped by region, resource, and tradition. In West Africa, spoons were often carved from hardwood, smoothed by hand and darkened by years of use. Among the Yoruba and other cultures, spoons could be ceremonial, carved with figures or animals, symbols of fertility or wisdom. In some communities, large spoons played a part in ritual dances and offerings, lifted not for food, but for spirit. In North Africa, in places like Morocco and Tunisia, spoons of metal or horn were used for tagines and stews, while beautiful carved spoons made from olive wood accompanied family meals. These were not just objects of need, they were objects of continuity, passed from one generation to the next. Wrapped in cloth, kept in baskets or tucked into the corner of a shared kitchen shelf. Across the Islamic world and throughout Africa, the spoon was more than a utensil. It was an heirloom, a tool of nourishment, a thing of quiet beauty. Imagine, now, a courtyard in Fez. The evening air is soft. A family gathers around a low table. A spoon stirs warm lentils, steam rising like a prayer. There is no rush. Only gratitude. The spoon moves gently from bowl to lips, carrying more than food, carrying tradition, memory, and peace. And so we leave this chapter as we found it, slowly, respectfully, with a spoon resting beside a dish, in the soft hush of evening. Renaissance refinement, European silver spoons. Now, let us wander into the soft candlelit glow of the Renaissance, a time when art and thought bloomed once more, and life in Europe began to change in slow and splendid ways. It was the 15th and 16th centuries. The world felt new again. Cathedrals soared. Paintings breathed with light, and even something as small and quiet as a spoon became a part of this transformation. As trade expanded and wealth quietly trickled into cities, spoons, once wooden and simple, began to reflect elegance and refinement. In places like Florence, Paris, and London, spoons were crafted not just for eating, but for display, for gifting, for legacy. The material of choice: silver. Silver spoons became a symbol of status and style. Their handles were no longer plain. Instead, they were engraved, twisted, beaded, and sometimes crowned with family crests or religious icons. The wealthy commissioned sets for weddings, banquets, and baptisms, spoons that might never touch soup, but would sit proudly in velvet-lined boxes. A quiet reflection, why spoons still matter. And now, dear listener, we arrive at the end of our journey. From ancient altars to quiet kitchens. From golden temples to plastic trays. The spoon has followed us. Patiently. Softly. Always. It may not glitter like a jewel, or roar like a cannon. It does not build, nor destroy. It is not grand, nor loud. But it is steadfast. A companion to our daily lives, not as an invention of brilliance, but as an object of care. Why do spoons still matter? Because they are present in the smallest moments. They stir the honey into our tea on a quiet morning. They deliver medicine to the lips of a loved one, feverish and pale. They cradle warm broth when we feel cold, tired, or lost. They feed babies, stir memories, and rest beside us in stillness. In moments of celebration, spoons scoop sweet desserts. In moments of mourning, they help serve food in hushed silence. They have no sharp edges. No menace. No urgency. Just a gentle curve. Just enough to carry what we need. A spoon is personal. It touches the mouth. It waits in your hand. It's the one piece of cutlery most trusted by the young, the old, the ill, and the tired. It teaches us to feed. It reminds us to slow down. It's there in traditions, in weddings, christenings, and quiet rituals of healing. It's there in culture, in carved love spoons and golden temple tools. And it's there in the ordinary, in the soup you had last night, and the drawer you open every morning without a thought. Yes. The spoon is humble. But that's what makes it beautiful. In a world that often rushes, the spoon waits. In a world that often breaks, the spoon serves. In a world full of noise, the spoon is still. So tonight, as you rest your head and let your thoughts drift like clouds, remember the small things, the steady, quiet companions. Like the spoon. Old as fire. Soft as care. Waiting silently, beside a warm bowl, in the quiet hush of the everyday. To give a silver spoon was to say, I honor you. To receive one was to be remembered. The phrase, born with a silver spoon, began to emerge, a quiet reference to privilege, to those who began life with delicate utensils already waiting. But beyond the grandeur of noble halls, the spoon still held its humble place in everyday life. In middle-class homes, pewter and tin spoons were common. They were practical, but shaped with care, perhaps with a small twist in the handle, or a gently scalloped bowl. In England, a special type of spoon called the apostle spoon became popular. These featured tiny figures of saints at the top of each handle, one for each of the 12 apostles, and sometimes Christ as the 13th. They were often given as christening gifts, symbols of protection and faith, kept for life. Picture a quiet study in the Netherlands. A scholar, hunched over his work, pauses to sip broth from a small porcelain bowl. His spoon, plain but silver, rests silently beside him. Nearby, a shelf holds a row of finely shaped spoons, gifted across generations. Or imagine a grand banquet in Venice, where music drifts between arches, and ladies in silks lift gleaming spoons to their lips, savoring creamy desserts by flickering candlelight. Even the act of spoon-making became an art. Silversmiths, working by firelight, hammered and polished, melted and molded, shaping spoons that would outlast their makers, resting centuries later in museums or quiet drawers. Through it all, the spoon continued to serve, soft in its presence, steady in its purpose. The Renaissance gave the world masterpieces and music, and in its quiet corners, it gave spoons a new place in the story. No longer just tools, but tokens of memory, beauty, and belonging. And as the age turned forward, the spoon remained, waiting patiently for the next hand to hold it. Colonial kitchens and New World spoons. Now let us drift across the wide oceans, carried gently by wooden ships and quiet winds, to the early days of the New World, a place where old traditions met new beginnings, and the spoon, ever faithful, journeyed with them. As European settlers arrived in the Americas during the 17th and 18th centuries, they brought with them their tools, their customs, and their spoons. In the early colonial kitchens of North America, life was simple and often harsh. Meals were made from what could be grown, hunted, or preserved. And yet, even here, the spoon remained a constant companion. Most spoons in this era were made from wood. Carved by hand, often by the very person who used them, they were not always graceful, but always useful. These spoon-stirred pots hung over open hearths, scooped up thick cornmeal mush, or ladled hearty stews made from salted meat and root vegetables. Imagine a quiet log cabin in New England. A fire crackles. A mother gently stirs a pot while children sit nearby, each with a wooden spoon in hand, waiting patiently for supper. The air smells of smoke and warm bread. The mood is simple, still, enduring. In towns and wealthier homes, pewter spoons became more common, soft gray metal shaped into modest elegance. These were often bought from local smiths or shipped from Europe, and they glinted faintly in candlelight beside rough ceramic bowls and tin plates. Further south, in Spanish and Portuguese colonies, spoons took on different forms. Influenced by the rich culinary traditions of the Iberian Peninsula and the cultures they encountered, spoons were sometimes carved from bone, or made from brass and horn. In kitchens with tiled walls and open courtyards, they stirred spiced stews, tropical fruits, and sweet drinks flavored with cinnamon and clove. But the story of spoons in the New World is not only a European tale. It is also the story of indigenous peoples and enslaved Africans, whose traditions shaped early American foodways and toolmaking. Many Native American groups had long-used shells, carved bone, or wooden ladles for serving and eating. These spoons were often crafted with great care, decorated with tribal patterns, and sometimes used in ceremonies as well as daily life. Enslaved Africans, brought against their will to these new lands, carried with them cultural memories of their homelands, and introduced techniques and flavors that would forever influence colonial cooking. In plantation kitchens, they carved spoons from local wood, blending old and new knowledge, preserving heritage through food and ritual. The colonial spoon, then, was a symbol of survival, adaptation, and continuity. Whether held in a grand plantation house, a dusty cabin, or a humble clay home, it was there, stirring, serving, feeding. Over time, the spoon would become more uniform, more industrial. But in this era, each one still bore the mark of its maker's hand. A curve here, a notch there. Imperfect. Personal. A reminder that even in difficult times, there is care in the smallest things. The warmth of a meal. The comfort of a well-worn tool. The peace found in the quiet scrape of a spoon against the side of a pot. Industrial age, the rise of mass-produced spoons. Let us now drift forward in time, to the 19th century, where the world began to hum with a different kind of energy, the steady churning of machines, the hiss of steam, the clang of iron on iron. The Industrial Revolution had arrived, and with it, everything began to change. Cities grew, factories rose, and the simple act of making a spoon was no longer bound to quiet hands carving by firelight. Now, spoons were stamped, cast, and pressed in great numbers. What once took hours could now be completed in minutes. And so the spoon, ever patient, found itself at the center of a new kind of world, one of uniformity, efficiency, and expansion. In factories across England, Germany, and the United States, spoons were made of steel, nickel, pewter, and silver plate, produced not by a village smith, but by machines operated by workers who often never touched the final product. These mass-produced spoons were polished and packed, shipped in boxes by train or steamship, and found their way into kitchens far and wide, from city apartments in London to prairie homes in Kansas. For the first time in history, every household could own a matching set of flatware. Spoons were no longer handmade one by one, but identical, shiny, and affordable. And yet, they still served the same quiet purpose. They stirred morning coffee, scooped sugar into teacups, and rested beside steaming bowls of soup after a long day's work. Whether polished silver or stamped steel, a spoon still fit perfectly in the hand, still lifted food with gentle grace. This was also the golden age of cutlery companies. Names like Rogers, Oneida, and Christoffel became known across continents. Their catalogs offered ornate patterns for the refined table, and simpler designs for the everyday meal. Specialized spoons also became more common during this time. Soup spoons, teaspoons, dessert spoons, mustard spoons, sugar spoons, and even tiny salt spoons, each crafted for a particular purpose, shaped with subtle distinction. Can you picture the polished table of a Victorian home? A lace cloth, a silver tray, fine china. And beside each place, a gleaming array of perfectly matched spoons, each with its own role to play. But the industrial spoon was not only for the well-to-do. In factory canteens, schoolhouses, hospitals, and boarding houses, plain metal spoons were laid out by the hundreds, simple, durable, reliable. Still, they carried warmth. A cup of tea during a long shift. Porridge on a gray morning. The taste of pudding after a school lesson. Small comforts in a rapidly changing world. As the 20th century approached, the spoon had become truly global, made in bulk, distributed by rail, and resting in drawers across the world. It had lost some of its uniqueness, but not its soul. Even among the machinery and the metal, the spoon remained what it had always been, a quiet tool of care, present in every life, whether rich or poor, old or young. And in its polished curve, you could still see the reflection of a face, leaning in, to eat, to heal, to savor. Spoons of ceremony, tea, medicine, and ritual. As the world moved forward and the spoon became a fixture in nearly every home, it also continued to hold a place of quiet importance, not just in kitchens and dining rooms, but in ceremonies, rituals, and moments of healing. Tonight, we explore the ceremonial spoon, the one not always used for food, but for meaning. Let us begin in the parlor, where the scent of tea leaves and warm conversation lingers. In the 18th and 19th centuries, particularly in Britain, the ritual of tea drinking became an art, slow, social, refined. And with it, the teaspoon emerged as a delicate tool of grace. Smaller than a dessert spoon, yet precisely shaped, the teaspoon was used to scoop loose leaves, stir sugar into porcelain cups, or rest neatly on a saucer beside a biscuit. Often made from silver, teaspoons came in elegant patterns, shells, vines, or twisted stems. Some were gifted in sets, nestled in velvet boxes, passed down from mother to daughter, or given as tokens of friendship. The act of stirring tea slowly, quietly, with a silver spoon, became a gesture of gentleness and calm. In other parts of the world, the spoon held ritualistic meaning far beyond the table. In Russia, for example, ornately painted kokloma spoons, decorated with bright red and gold flowers, were used in traditional ceremonies, especially among folk dancers and during festivals. These spoons were not only tools, but instruments, clacked together in rhythm, held high, symbols of pride and heritage. In religious rituals, too, spoons were often present. In Eastern Orthodox Christianity, the liturgical spoon, known as the levita, is used to administer the Eucharist, a sacred gesture performed with reverence, the spoon lifted gently to the lips of the faithful. Here, the spoon becomes more than metal, it becomes a vessel of belief. And in quiet corners of everyday life, there were other, smaller ceremonies, those of medicine. The humble medicine spoon, often made of porcelain or glass, found its place in apothecaries and beside the beds of the unwell. With a long narrow bowl and a spout, it was used to carefully deliver bitter tonics or sweet elixirs, to the elderly, the young, or the fragile. Imagine a child, feverish in bed, as a grandmother sits at the edge, holding a cool spoon filled with syrup. A soft voice murmurs comfort. The spoon tips slowly. Healing, not just through medicine, but through presence. In many cultures, ceremonial spoons were also given as gifts, for births, for marriages, for transitions. In Wales, the tradition of the love spoon continued, carved from a single piece of wood, often with hearts, locks, or bells. A spoon not to stir with, but to express affection and lasting devotion. Throughout the centuries, spoons have stirred more than soup. They have stirred feelings, memories, and rituals that bind us to one another. Small and quiet, but never meaningless. Whether in the flicker of a church candle, the clink of a teacup, or the soft hush of a sick room, the ceremonial spoon reminds us that not all moments are practical. Some are purely human. The modern spoon, stainless steel to plastic. And now, we find ourselves in more familiar times, the 20th century, gently unfolding into the 21st, where the spoon, like so many things, adapted quietly to the pace of modern life. No longer a luxury. No longer carved by hand. The modern spoon, smooth and polished, is now so common that we rarely think about it. Yet still, it sits beside our plates, waits in our drawers, and stirs the warm drinks we hold in sleepy hands. Its presence is constant. Its design, simple. Its story, ongoing. The age of stainless steel brought a quiet revolution. First developed in the early 1900s, stainless steel offered durability, hygiene, and affordability, a perfect match for the changing world. It didn't rust. It didn't stain. It didn't need polishing. It was, in many ways, the ideal material for the modern kitchen. By mid-century, stainless steel spoons could be found in nearly every home, lined up neatly in cutlery trays, stacked in cafeterias, and washed in sinks that hummed with running water and radio music. Factories produced them by the millions. Sleek. Uniform. Familiar. They came in all shapes and sizes, teaspoons, tablespoons, serving spoons, measuring spoons, each with a quiet job, each resting lightly in a hand. And though the craft of silversmithing and hand carving continued in smaller circles, the spoon had, for most, become a daily object, not revered, but relied upon. Then, in the latter half of the 20th century, another form of spoon emerged, plastic. The disposable spoon. Born of convenience, mass consumption, and the rise of fast food, plastic spoons became a symbol of the on-the-go lifestyle. They appeared in lunch bags, vending machines, airplane trays, and drive-through bags. White, lightweight, and silent. There is a certain quiet sadness in their story, used once, then thrown away. No patina. No story. No memory. And yet, they served their purpose. A bowl of instant noodles. A cup of yogurt. A moment's need. In contrast, some designers pushed back, creating modern spoons of striking beauty. Minimalist. Sculptural. Ergonomic. Stainless steel with brushed finishes. Bamboo with rounded curves. Reusable spoons for a world reawakening to sustainability. And still, in many homes, an old silver spoon may rest quietly in a drawer, perhaps with initials engraved, or the soft wear of decades of use. It is not flashy, but it is remembered. The modern spoon exists in every corner of life. In hospitals. In homes. In diners and dishwashers. In lunchboxes and luxury kitchens. It is both ordinary and essential. It stirs coffee in a morning mug. It lifts soup to the lips of someone ill. It sits beside birthday cakes and wedding toasts. It helps feed the very first meals of a newborn child. Though we rarely stop to notice it, it is there, always. Quiet. Trustworthy. Human.